So that was unexpected. You guys absolutely demolished the like button on the last video. I told you guys that if you guys hit 700 likes, I would upload the next version of this in 24 hours, and you guys just blew my expectations out of the water. Because truth be told, I didn't believe in you guys at all. I really had no idea you guys could do it. So for today, the like button is gonna be 700 likes. I wonder if you guys can hit that again. But I do quickly want to apologize. I know I said 24 hours and I ended up uploading a different video, which you guys should definitely go check out. What if Naruto had won for all? The thumbnail's fire, the video's fire, everything about it is just so sick. So go check that one out after you're done with this video. And without any further ado, let's get into the sports festival. Immediately cutting back into the sports festival, we would then cut to the Todoroki versus Tape Boy fight. And when Todoroki would shoot his massive ice glacier attack, instead of having the crazy reactions that we would have had in the original, people would be like, whoa, that's pretty cool too, I guess. And you know, even with that massive iceberg that is practically nearly touching the people in the arena, they would all still kind of be underwhelmed, considering the fact that they had just seen some kid possess the powers of a literal Greek god in their world. It's insane. But anyways, after all the rest of the matches would finally be over, Deku would find himself in the second round going up against Todoroki. And with the crowd finding this out, they would all lose it. They're like, what? The son of the number 2 hero and Izuku were going at it? They would start going crazy, with everybody in the stands being told to remain seated and not to stand up for any reasons. Also, to be very careful considering the two combatants that are going up against each other. They would also tell the crowd that this one might get a little dangerous, so sorry ahead of time. Izuku in this moment, now staring down at Todoroki as he'd be levitating in front of him, would ask him how exactly he wants to do this. Todoroki staring at him with anger in his eyes as he would think to himself that he was going to bring Izuku down a peg or two. But the second that the match would begin and Todoroki would shoot an ice glacier towards Deku's direction, Deku standing there would simply tank the attack, with everybody watching him in the eyes going, what? Is that it? He got taken out by one ice attack? But suddenly, the ice would start to shatter, as Deku would then fly out of it and aim his laser vision to the direction of Todoroki. This heat beam would go flying towards him as he would create a protection of ice, but it would melt right through it, with a smile appearing on Izuku. As the beam would get closer and closer to Todoroki, Todoroki would start realizing that he's pushing him off the arena, but right before it would make contact with him and ultimately give him 4th degree burns, the beam would completely stop. Izuku then breathing in, shooting a massive wind attack towards the direction of Todoroki as it would nearly throw him off the arena. The only reason it's not is because Todoroki would have actually used his ice to create a cushion for himself. The ice itself, however, would start shattering, and it's at this point that Izuku would smile. He would then fly towards the direction of Todoroki before throwing him into the stratosphere, flying off towards him with a sonic boom, leaving wind shooting throughout the stadium, as Izuku, now right face to face with Todoroki, grabbing him by the collar, would tell him that it's not quite yet time for this battle to be over, as he would then pretty much fly with Todoroki behind him at super high speeds, which Todoroki would actually take damage from this, considering that he had to keep his eyes closed the whole time, because the wind pressure was actually affecting his skin, with the wind pressure hitting him in this moment, causing him to look like he's inside of a fighter jet. You know those clips that go viral where like the people inside of the jets, like their faces look like super old because of the way that their skin is kind of like bending? That's what's happening to Todoroki, and as they're flying through the air higher and higher, Deku would finally end up holding Todoroki with one arm, asking if he's had enough. Todoroki, staring at Deku with anger in his eyes, would then burn him on his arm. However, as Izuku would stand there tanking the blast of fire that would engulf the area, Izuku would stand there without a single scratch. Not even his costume had been injured by that. Izuku then would smile at Todoroki and say, good match, as he would then fly down towards the direction of the earth, so unbelievably fast, grabbing Todoroki by the collar, as Todoroki and Izuku would lock eyes, and Todoroki would feel real fear in this moment. He would think to himself that he's about to fall thousands and thousands of feet from the air, but right before he would touch the ground, Izuku would stop, causing all of Todoroki's internal system to just go into shock, because he had just been going from like the highest possible speed to just an instant stop. His brain had gotten rattled, and he would place Todoroki on the ground gently. After doing so, he would then lift his arms as everybody starts pretty much praising him a little bit, as Izuku would ball his fist up and go, "All right!" He would then punch at the air as it would create double the force of what All Might's punches can do, and he would proceed to change the weather. A bit of rain would start to actually hit the arena, and this would actually impact a bit of the next couple of fights. However, since Izuku wasn't really part of them, nobody really cared, and getting wet didn't even matter to anybody, considering the fact that they were witnessing Izuku Midoriya, the greatest hero prospect that's ever existed. Eventually, every single match would be over, leading to Bakugo and Izuku inside of the ring after having defeated Todoroki, since his third match against Ida had been cancelled because Ida left the arena due to Ingenium. That said, however, with this being the case, Deku and Bakugo would both find themselves in the arena, and Bakugo would start trash talking Deku, telling him not to hold anything back, you hear? Izuku hearing this would smile, as the battle would begin, and Izuku blitzing to the direction of Bakugo would go to throw one of his hardest punches, stopping just short before it could actually hit Bakugo in the face, and creating a wind force so strong that people in the seats nearly got blown back, if not for Cementos creating a wall of stone to protect them. It's at this point that Deku, looking at Bakugo, would then smirk, to which Bakugo in this moment would grit his teeth going, "Damn you, Deku! You think you can make a fool of me?" He would start trembling, not realizing it, as Izuku, flying up into the air, seeing the clouds begin to form, would literally proceed to grab a thunderbolt straight out of the air, grabbing it as he would then throw it at the direction of Bakugo, and this thunderbolt would have turned white, having been converted into energy by Izuku's arm and then thrown with the other. It was absolutely insane. The dude was performing what the Flash does, basically. Throwing this lightning bolt at Bakugo, this would completely stop his heart for a moment, as he would fall out of the arena unconscious and then suddenly be woken up with a jolt of energy. Deku placing his hand on his chest and waking him back up by powering a bit of energy throughout his body. This would shock Bakugo awake like they do in the hospitals, as he would look at Izuku and get his hand away from his face. Deku, however, would just smile and wave, and as the medals would be awarded and Deku would receive first place, the crowd would go bonkers. Izuku being told by All Might that he expects great things from him, and Izuku nodding, telling him that that's exactly what he plans to do. It's at this point that Deku, proceeding to go to the waiting area to get changed into his normal clothes to go meet up with his mom who's in the stands, would then proceed to get a text, or an email more specifically, by the company that sponsors him. They would pretty much give him an email informing him that they would love to recruit him for once his hero career actually starts, stating that the previous contract that they had gave them a clause to be the first people to recruit Izuku, and after seeing that performance, they're positive more people are going to go after him. They would offer Izuku a massive amount of money if he would agree to them now without looking at any other offers. But Izuku, seeing this message, would simply smirk, thinking to himself that there's no way he's going to take this offer, knowing how much better he can get out there. From here, Izuku would smile, putting his phone in his pocket, as suddenly Uraraka, walking in the room, would say, "Hey Izuku, that was incredible out there. You threw punches, you flew," and she starts pretty much acting as though she's doing all that stuff. Suddenly the rest of his classmates barge in, they're like, "Dude, you're the best." Everyone with the exception of Todoroki, Bakugo, and of course Ida. They would all start glazing Izuku as he's sitting there, would start to pretty much be like, "You guys, like, you don't have to tell me how great I am all the time, you know?" But everyone's just like, "Dude, like, we can't even help it." But Izuku just kind of like looking at them, and he's like, yeah, whatever. As he would then finish putting his shirt on, which the girls, having stared at Izuku's body prior to that, would all be kind of blushing. Deku in this moment would then tell them that he has to go. He has a little bit of a date planned on today. The girls would be like, "What? You're going on a date?" And Izuku's like, "Yeah, my mom, she invited me out to eat. Catch you later." It's at this point that he would leave, and all the girls would be like, "Oh, good, it's just that." As we would then get a bit of a filler chapter where Izuku and his mom are going out to eat and stuff like that. Maybe like a little villain attack could happen while they were like out eating and something like that, and Izuku could use his super speed to take the villain out. It'd be kind of cool considering that Izuku would literally be about to take a bite of the whatever food he is eating. If for this point I want to say sushi because he's from Japan, so he probably likes it. And as he's eating it, Izuku could see from the corner of his eye that a villain was about to crush a baby carrot. carriage. So Izuku tapping into his top speed would practically make the world freeze around him, as flying over to the direction of this villain, he would smash it into the ground, taking the baby carriage and putting it right next to the mother, as he would send them flying about, like a street away. It's at this point that everybody seeing what had happened would be like, oh no, he's about to, but then it just all goes silent, like, what happened to the villain? They're all just staring at it and it has his face clobbered. Meanwhile, Izuku's finishing taking the bite of his food, and Inko would be like, Izuku, did you do that? Izuku just looks at her and chuckles a little bit, saying, sure did, Mom. Guess my quirk's getting even stronger. Inko would then look at her son and be like, wow, it really is. How did you do that? Izuku would go on to explain what the heck he just did, and she's just like, that's scary. I don't think anybody should be able to move that fast, Izuku. But Izuku's like, yeah, I don't think so either, but if it works, right? At least I'm on the hero's side. Inko would start to chuckle, saying, yeah, definitely, as she wouldn't be able to help kind of being scared of her son. But as soon as these thoughts would start to flood her mind, she'd be like, no, what am I thinking? This is my Izuku I'm talking about. He's a sweetheart. He'd never hurt a fly. Yeah, I've raised him right. As Izuku would suddenly say, you know, Mom, you don't have to worry about me turning evil. It's at this point that Inko would say, what? What are you talking about? As Izuku would point to his ears, saying that he has super hearing, remember? He would then go on to explain that his ability probably evolved or something like that. And now, instead of just hearing very, very intricate sounds and things that he wants to listen to, he can probably also hear thoughts. She would be like, that's incredible, as her mind would start racing, but then suddenly we would get Izuku standing behind her, as he would then give her a hug, and he would pretty much tell her, Mom, I will never turn into a villain. As Inko would feel her son hugging her, she would then see the image of a young baby Izuku who was flying with a big smile on his face, just kind of like zipping around through the air. Remembering all this would calm her mind immediately, as she would say, you're right, Izuku. I'm sorry I even thought that. I can't believe that I did that. You must think I'm a horrible mother. But Izuku would say, stop right there. I would never think that. Not even in my wildest dreams. As we would now cut to the very next day at UA. Because to be completely transparent with you guys, I didn't even think about that scene until just now when I decided I'd give him another power. But anyways, cutting back to the classroom, everybody in class 1A would look to the front of the class as the pro hero Midnight would walk in the room and pretty much tell them all that today they're all going to be picking their hero names. So everybody would get super excited for this, and Midnight would start approving or disapproving certain names. Izuku at this point, making his way towards the front of the class, would hold out his little thing, with his name being the do-it-all hero, Zeus. Having chosen that name thanks to the fact that people in the stadium had actually started calling him that, with somebody coming up with that and pretty much the tweet going completely viral. Deku unironically was named by the people, and that's kind of cool. So once this would all be over and they would all start talking about their hero internships, Deku would have been flooded by practically every single hero agency in the world, with the only few people that wouldn't try to get him would probably be very, very small agencies, just because they know he probably won't choose them. So Izuku, looking at this list, would be overwhelmed, seeing each and every single one of the top heroes, with the exception of All Might, because it's not like he can exactly train him on much. So with that said, Izuku looking over this list would realize that he's probably going to have this chosen by his agency. He would send them the list, and they would quickly send him a text back saying what agency he's going to go with. Then the rest of his classmates would say, Izuku, what agencies did you get a request from? And Izuku would show them the list that pretty much was unending. They'd be like, what? Izuku got that many internship requests? They're like, it's practically all of Japan. In fact, some of the US even has you here. Izuku would start smiling as everybody's just like, that's incredible. But as Izuku would check his phone to see who exactly he's going to go intern with, this is when he would see that the person that they chose was the #1 hero in America, Star in Stripes. Izuku reading that would be kind of stunned that they decided to send him out somewhere else, with the agency pretty much telling him that the reason they did this was to show off his potential even in America, just like All Might would have done so in his younger days. Izuku would be like, that's actually pretty smart. So for the entirety of Izuku's internship, he would actually spend his time in America, meaning that unfortunately for Ida, he was probably going to be dying or being paralyzed. And whichever you really want to go with, it kind of sucks either way. But we're going to be going with the death option, because Stain did kind of say that he was going to be killing Ida if nobody came to help, so yeah, we're going to go with that. Anyways, As Izuku would be abroad, he would suddenly receive a text message from Aizawa informing him that he's sorry to tell him, but their class rep Ida was killed by the hero killer. Izuku, hearing this, would stare at his phone in utter shock, reminiscing back to everything that's happened leading to this. Him flying to this agency because it would have just been faster than anything else, him arriving and meeting Star and meeting her comrades and the agency and being shown the ropes about how hero works actually goes down. And then he would even remember some of the battles that he's had with Star and Stripes, her wanting to actually spar with the kid, knowing that he has what it takes, and him literally defeating Star and Stripes, who has one of the most busted abilities in the entire series, who unfortunately was still unable to compete with Izuku's superhero quirk. Him moving so fast that before Star could even perceive it, he had already practically defeated her. The dude practically had the O-Clock quirk from the My Hero Vigilante series, which, speaking of, if you guys haven't seen that anime yet, you have to. It's literally a must-watch type thing. It's incredible. I cannot sing the series praise enough. I have loved every volume that I've been reading of it, and I actually have the physical copies because my girlfriend got them for me. So it's the first manga that I've ever read, and before recording this, I actually had read chapters 5 and 6, or actually not chapters, but volumes. But that's besides the point. Anyways, Star, looking at Izuku and seeing that his face expression had changed, would grab him on his shoulder saying, "What's wrong, kid? You look a little down there." Izuku, then staring at Star, would say that her classmate has just died during his internship. She would then pretty much hug him and say that she's sorry to hear that. He would then tell her that it was the hero killer. As Star, staring at Deku, would say, "What are you planning on doing?" Knowing that Izuku has not only the desire to go after the hero killer now, but the ability to. And so Izuku, looking at her with these eyes of like, "I'm gonna destroy him," would then tell Izuku, "Come with me." It's at this point that she would go on to pretty much show Izuku one of her memorabilia that would be in her office. And as she would do this, she would go on to explain to Izuku that a long time ago, one of her best friends was actually killed on duty, and that she made the horrific mistake of actually taking things too far. The villain responsible for this is now brain dead and in the hospital, and it's all her fault. And come to find out, the guy wasn't even as much of a villain as it seemed. Apparently, the guy was trying to rob the place to feed his dying children and his family that was starving. She would go on to explain that if she had known the reason for how things had actually went down, maybe she wouldn't have blown a fuse, but just being completely unconsolable, it just didn't help. And as Izuku would hear that, he would then stare at Star as she would say, "Look, kid, if you want to go after the hero killer, we're gonna do it by the book, and I'm gonna be right by your side." Izuku, then looking at Star, would say, "Do you mean it?" As Star would say, "Of course I did, kid. After all, who's gonna stop you if you really want to go take out the hero killer? Plus, it's about time I stretched my legs for the day, don't you think?" Izuku at this point would smile at Star as he would grab her and fly towards the direction of Hosu City. They would arrive in mere moments, and once they would land, it would be nighttime. So Star and Izuku would both go from different alley and alley checking for the hero killer. However, due to Izuku's incredible strength and ability to speed around so fast that time seems to be moving slow, while Star was literally flying in the air about to check the first alleyway, Deku had already found the hero killer and would be standing face to face with him. It's at this point that he would click a button alerting Star to his actual location, as he would say, "So, you're the hero killer." "Yeah, who's asking?" Stain would say, as he would lick his blade, and Izuku, looking at him, would say, "You're the scum responsible for killing Ida and Ingenium. I hope you've written your will down, because you're not making it out of here without a few broken bones." It's at this point that Star would arrive right next to Izuku, as Stain would be shocked. "Star and Stripe? Interesting. You plan to get revenge, fake hero?" He would lick his blade, as Izuku, hearing that moniker, would wonder what the heck he's on about. It's at this point that he would read his thoughts, and he would begin hearing all of what Stain was thinking, how he was gonna lunge towards them with his blade, catch them off guard with his blood curdle quirk, and then kill the both of them for being false heroes. Izuku, wondering what the heck a false hero is, would say, "What's a false hero?" And in that instant, Stain's blade would leave his hand, flying to the direction of Izuku, who in this moment, reading Stain's racing thoughts, would catch the blade mid-air, saying he's not going to repeat himself. Stain, now standing still, understanding the predicament he's in, would smile at the boy, saying, "So you were a fast one." As Izuku would speed blitz towards him, punching him square in his stomach so hard that Stain starts vomiting on the ground, with Izuku whispering in his ear, and a strong one. Stain in this moment would stare up at Izuku, calling him a fake hero, as he would then tell him that he has no right to use his quirk like that. It's at this point that Stain would leap backwards and would start thinking about what has led him to this moment, realizing that he's most likely not going to get out of here. Star, using her quirk, would actually cause Stain to be completely unable to leave a prison of air she would create, using one of her laws or quirks or however it is her power works. And now, Izuku would be left standing in front of Stain, reading his mind and seeing all the things that are coursing through it. Izuku would think, it's sickening. And at this point, the police and authorities would arrive. Stain would then be thrown into a police van as he would be taken off to the police authorities, where he would ultimately be drugged up and pretty much placed under custody in Tartarus. It's at this point that Izuku, looking at Star, would thank her, as news coverage would cover the incident of the hero Star in Stripes from America coming over to Japan to handle the hero killer. And just like you would expect from the media, they eventually end up finding out that Izuku was actually with her during that time. So this goes viral and people start talking about how it was probably the kid who defeated Stain, seeing as he has such an incredible quirk, and they did hear talks about one of his classmates being taken out. This would go crazy in public eye, and UA would start to have more than just a few questions their way. Why did one of your students get killed? Why is UA allowing their students into the field so early on? UA would actually get into a bit of trouble thanks to Izuku, but after everything would finally blow away and the students would return to class, everybody would kind of have a bit of a somber tone because now their class rep was dead and UA was under a lot of scrutiny. However, there's a lot of people in the media supporting what Izuku did, saying that it was incredible and that the hero Star in Stripes is a true, genuine hero. Instead of allowing the kid to go through with something that would probably make him somewhat of a vigilante, she came and helped the boy to do things by the book. This eventually would help things blow over, and after a bit of time, the students would all be told about the pro hero final exams and yada yada yada. But with that said, we're going to be covering that next time because that is where I'm going to be ending part 3 of What If Deku Had a Superhero Quirk. Like I said at the beginning of the video, boys, go check out my What If Naruto Would One For All video because I poured so much work into that video. And while you're at it, check out What If Naruto Was Evil or What If Kurama Took Over Naruto. That one was a doozy of a video and I loved every second of making it. So definitely be sure to go check that out for me. And with all that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, leave a like, considering that the like goal for today, 700 likes. So once you guys hit that, I'll be sure to drop more. But with all that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, I love each and every single one of you guys. It has been your boy Xehther, and I am out. Peace.
Hey, you made it to the end of the video! Like it or die!
That wasn't the line, Kachan!
Whatever!